Recently, the Miami Herald reported that a large portion of Americans, quote, doubt democracy and view political violence as acceptable. This should not be surprising considering the institutional left, who currently rules us, has been putting everything they've got into making this happen. And succeeding since they now control nearly every major institution in our country, from education to media to large corporations to public libraries to people who count votes. The results come from a poll from the University of Virginia's Center for Politics, which surveyed 2,000 voters last month. Among their sobering findings were that nearly 4 in 10 Americans now believe it is acceptable to use violence to stop political opponents. By the way, Biden supporters are, of course, more likely to think violence is acceptable. Meanwhile, almost half of Americans also think the government should restrict, quote, offensive political views. Again, more Biden voters want to restrict, but a third of Trump voters now agree, since they've been censored for 5 years now, and probably think the other side should live under these same rules. It gets worse. 7 in 10 Americans now believe catastrophic harm will come to the country if the other side ever wins an election again. In fact, 4 in 10 voters say democracy is no longer a viable system, that America should explore, quote, alternative forms of government. Finally, nearly 3 in 10 American voters believe elections should be suspended altogether in time of crisis. You would expect election skepticism from Trump supporters since the last election was so magnificently secure, but even a quarter of Biden voters think elections should be suspended in crisis. It's worth noting that our elite and their pet journalists are actually very good at inventing crises, so you can do the math on that one. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained. What's next is the anger and division will keep growing because our ruling elite wants it. They want us to fight each other so they have free rein to pillage and enslave us. There is, of course, a solution for enough people to wake up that we change course and restore the tolerance and mutual respect that characterized America's political culture for centuries before the institutional left went to war. This is not as hard as it sounds. In a separate poll, Pew Research found that just 1 in 7 Americans trust the government to do the right thing, while trust is plunging across the board in those captured institutions, media, schools, even the military. So if enough people disbelieve the totalitarian elite, we could yet turn it around. Having said it is a slow and frustrating process, convincing grandma that CNN is no longer news and that the science ain't what it seems. But one by one, people are waking up, and when they do, they often reject the entire package, the division, the anger, the 15-minute hates. And what if we fail? What if voters simply won't wake up until they get hit on the head with a rock? Then we could be in for some very difficult years ahead. We could even see the breakup of the United States. That same University of Virginia poll found fully 1/3 of Americans now want to break up into blue and red halves, presumably in hopes they can liberate some of the institutions that have been thoroughly captured by the totalitarian left, or, if they swing the other way, in hopes those same totalitarians can take over the rest of their lives. A fresh podcast just dropped this morning. Check it out at the link. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.